The alien queen ridiculed human warriors until she encountered one in battle. Part 1. The Empress's Scorn. The bridge of the Velthari flagship was a place of cold beauty. Metal walls curved like the inside of a seashell, covered in strange symbols that glowed with soft blue light. At the center of this massive room sat a throne made of black stone, and upon it rested Empress Velith, ruler of 400 star systems. She was not human. No human could ever look like her. Velith stood 7 feet tall when she rose from her seat. Her skin was covered in scales that changed color with her mood, shifting from deep purple to bright silver. She had 4 arms, each one decorated with golden rings that marked her conquests. Her eyes were large and yellow, like those of a great cat, and when she smiled, her teeth were sharp as knives. Today she was smiling. Around her throne stood representatives from dozens of alien species. They had come from across the galaxy to watch what the Velthari called a demonstration. Below them, through the massive windows of the flagship, a small blue planet floated in the darkness of space. Meridian 7, a human mining colony with 50,000 souls. "My honored guests," Velith spoke, her voice deep and musical. "Thank you for accepting my invitation. Today you will witness the power of the Velthari Empire. Today you will see why we have never lost a war." The aliens murmured among themselves. Some were afraid, others were curious. All of them knew better than to refuse an invitation from the Empress. In the corner of the bridge, standing apart from the others, was a human man. His name was Tiho, and he wore the uniform of a commander in the Human Defense Force. He was not tall by human standards, but he stood straight and still, his hands clasped behind his back. His face showed nothing. Velith noticed him. Her smile grew wider. "Ah, Commander Tiho," she said, making his name sound like a joke. "How kind of the Galactic Council to send a human observer. Tell me, Commander, are you here to watch your people die, or perhaps to beg for mercy?" Tiho did not move. "I am here to observe, Empress, nothing more." "How boring," Velith sighed. She turned to address the crowd again. "Speaking of boring, let us talk about humans." She waved one of her 4 hands, and a holographic screen appeared in the air. It showed images of human soldiers in combat. They were running, hiding behind walls, firing their weapons from covered positions. "Look at them," Velith laughed. "These are the warriors that the Galactic Council believes deserve a seat among the great species of the galaxy. Pathetic creatures who hide behind rocks and shoot from the shadows." Several aliens laughed with her. A few looked uncomfortable but said nothing. "They live such short lives," Velith continued. 80 years, perhaps 100 if they are lucky. My grandmother is still alive and she was born 3,000 years ago. What can these insects possibly understand about war, about honor, about glory?" She changed the image. Now it showed a Velthari warrior standing over a fallen enemy, all 4 arms raised in victory. "This is how the Velthari fight, face to face, blade to blade. We do not hide, we do not run. We meet our enemies with open eyes and destroy them with our own hands. That is honor, that is strength." Tiho still did not speak. His eyes moved slowly across the bridge, taking in every detail: the guards, the doors, the positions of the other observers. "You are very quiet, Commander," Velith said. She stepped down from her throne and walked toward him. The crowd parted before her like water around a stone. "Does it hurt to hear the truth about your species, or have you simply accepted what you are?" Tiho looked up at her. She was nearly 2 feet taller than him, and she clearly enjoyed looking down. "With respect, Empress," he said calmly, "I have learned that the wisest response to insults is silence." Velith laughed again. "Wise, he thinks himself wise. Tell me, wise human, what will your people do when my fleet arrives at your homeworld? Will you hide behind your moon and shoot at us from the shadows? Will you run to some distant corner of space and hope we do not follow?" "I cannot speak for what my people will do," Tiho replied. "I can only speak for myself." And what do you say for yourself? Tiho met her yellow eyes without fear. I say that you have never fought humans before. Not truly. You have bullied small colonies and called it war. You have crushed species that surrendered at the first sign of blood, but you have never faced an enemy that refused to break. The bridge went silent. Velith's scales shifted to a darker shade of purple. Refused to break, she repeated softly. Little human, I have broken empires older than your entire species. I have watched civilizations burn that were building cities when your ancestors were still climbing trees. Do you truly believe your kind is different? I do not believe it, Tiho said. I know it. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Velith threw back her head and laughed, louder than before. I like you, Commander Tiho. You have courage, even if it is foolish courage. Very well, let us put your confidence to the test. She turned to one of her officers. Begin the bombardment of Meridian 7. Let the human observer watch his people burn. Tiho's expression did not change, but his hands tightened behind his back. The officer spoke quickly in the Velthari language, and through the windows they could see bright lights beginning to rain down on the planet below. Orbital strikes, each one powerful enough to destroy a city block. There is a human saying, Velith said, watching the destruction. Something about chickens coming home to roost. Is that correct? Tiho did not answer. His eyes were fixed on the planet below, where 50,000 of his people were fighting to survive. Do not worry, Velith continued. We will not kill them all. We need some alive to work the mines. The Velthari are not wasteful, you see. We are practical. She returned to her throne and sat down, arranging her 4 arms on the armrests. Send the ground forces, she ordered. I want the colony secured within the hour, and Commander Tiho, you may send a message to your Admiral Hunsik. Tell him that his people now belong to the Velthari Empire. Tell him that any attempt at rescue will be treated as an act of war. Tiho finally moved. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small communication device. Velith watched with amusement as he typed a short message. What did you tell him? She asked. The truth, Tiho replied. He put the device away. Velith did not know what the message said. She did not care. What could one human admiral do against the might of the Velthari? Far away, on the bridge of the human warship Soul's Pride, Admiral Hunsik read the message on his screen. It contained only 6 words. They don't know what we are. The admiral was an old man with gray hair and a face full of scars. He had fought in 3 wars and lost many friends. He had seen things that would break most people, but when he read those words, he smiled. Send word to the defense stations, he said quietly, and wake up our friends on Meridian 7. It seems the Velthari want to learn about humanity. He looked out at the stars, toward the distant planet where his people were suffering. Let's teach them. The alien queen ridiculed human warriors until she encountered one in battle. Part 2, The Fall of Meridian 7. The first explosion woke Sergeant Jimin from a dreamless sleep. She was on her feet before her eyes were fully open, years of training taking control of her body. Around her, the barracks shook as another blast struck somewhere in the distance. Report, she shouted, pulling on her boots. Corporal Yunji appeared at the door, already fully dressed and armed. She was a small woman with short black hair and calm eyes that never seemed to show fear. Orbital bombardment, Sergeant. Velthari fleet just broke through the outer defense satellites. Jimin grabbed her rifle and moved. Her squad was already gathering in the hallway, 12 soldiers checking their weapons and gear. Private Dowen was the last to arrive, still pulling on his armor. He was barely 20 years old, with a young face that had not yet learned to hide its fear. What do we do, Sergeant? He asked, his voice shaking slightly. Jimin looked at her squad. These were her people. She had trained with them, eaten with them, laughed with them. Now she would probably die with them. We do our job, she said simply. Move out. They ran through the corridors of the military station, past windows that showed a sky filled with fire. The Velthari were not being careful. They were hitting everything. Civilian buildings, mining equipment, water treatment plants. They wanted to break the colony's spirit before their ground troops even landed. The communication system crackled to life. A voice came through, broken by static. "All defense units, this is Admiral Hunsick. Evacuation protocols are now active. I repeat, evacuation protocols are now active. Transport ships are en route. You have 47 minutes. Hold the line. Buy us time." 47 minutes. Jimin did the math in her head. The Velthari drop pods would reach the surface in about 15 minutes. That meant her squad would need to fight for over half an hour against whatever came down from those ships. She looked at Yoonji, and the corporal nodded. They both understood. This was not a mission they were meant to survive. This was a mission that would save 50,000 lives at the cost of 12. "Change of plan," Jimin said as they reached the exit of the station. "Forget the defensive positions. We're going underground." "The mines?" Doan asked. "The mines," Jimin confirmed. "We know those tunnels. The Velthari don't. If we fight them up here on open ground, we die in 5 minutes. Down there we can make every minute count." They ran across the open ground between the military station and the nearest mine entrance. Above them, the sky was turning dark with falling objects. Drop pods, hundreds of them, thousands maybe. "Move faster," Jimin shouted. They reached the mine entrance just as the first pods began to hit the ground in the distance. Each impact shook the earth like a small earthquake. Jimin could see Velthari warriors emerging from the pods, tall figures with 4 arms and scales that caught the light of the fires burning across the colony. Inside the mine, the air was cool and dark. Emergency lights cast a red glow on the stone walls. Jimin allowed herself one deep breath before turning to her squad. "Listen carefully," she said. "We have 47 minutes to keep the Velthari busy. That means we don't fight fair. We don't stand and face them like they expect. We hit them from the shadows. We collapse tunnels on their heads. We make them afraid of every corner and every darkness." Yoonji was already pulling explosives from her pack. "I can rig the main junction points. When they come through, we bring the ceiling down." "Do it," Jimin said. "Doan, you and the others set up ambush positions at every intersection. Remember your training. 2 shots, then move. Never stay in one place for more than 10 seconds. "Sergeant," one of the soldiers said, a man named Sukjin who had been in the squad for 5 years. "What about the civilians?" Jimin felt a pain in her chest. The civilians. There were still thousands of them in the colony, hiding in shelters, waiting for evacuation ships that might never reach them. "Some of them are in the lower mining levels," she said. "There's a tunnel that leads to the secondary landing zone. If we can keep the Velthari focused on us, the evacuation teams can get them out." "And if we can't?" Doan asked quietly. Yoonji put a hand on his shoulder. "Then we die trying, kid. That's what soldiers do." Jimin watched her squad spread out through the tunnels. They were scared. She could see it in their eyes, hear it in their breathing, but they moved anyway. They followed orders. They did their job. That was the thing about humans that other species never understood. Fear did not make them weaker. Fear kept them alive. Fear made them think, made them plan, made them dangerous in ways that a fearless warrior could never be. The first group of Velthari entered the mines 20 minutes later. There were about 50 of them, led by a massive warrior with gold markings on his scales. They moved with the confidence of predators, their 4 arms carrying weapons that glowed with strange energy. Jimin watched them from behind a pile of mining equipment. She was so close she could hear them speaking in their alien language, could see the way their yellow eyes scanned the darkness without concern. They were not afraid. Why would they be? They were the mighty Velthari, conquerors of 400 star systems. What could a handful of humans possibly do to them? Jimin smiled in the darkness. She raised her rifle, and she pulled the trigger. The first shot took the leader in the throat. He fell without a sound. Before his body hit the ground, Jimin was already moving, running through the shadows as the other Velthari turned toward where she had been. Two more shots rang out from the other direction. Two more Velthari fell. Then Yunji triggered the first set of explosives. The ceiling came down on a dozen warriors, burying them under tons of rock. The survivors screamed in confusion, firing their weapons wildly into the darkness. They could not see their enemies. They could not understand what was happening. Jimin stopped behind another pile of equipment, waited for a Velthari to run past her hiding spot, and fired twice into his back. Then she was moving again, slipping through tunnels she had memorized during months of boring patrol duty. This was not the war the Velthari understood. There was no honor here, no glory, just darkness and death and the endless maze of tunnels that Jimin's squad knew like the veins in their own hands. After an hour, the first group of Velthari was destroyed. All 50 of them lay dead in the tunnels, and Jimin had not lost a single soldier. But she knew it would not last. The Velthari would adapt. They would send more troops, and eventually numbers would overcome skill. A message came through her communication device. Admiral Hunsik's voice, tired but steady. "Evacuation at 40%. Keep holding. You're doing good, Sergeant." 40%. 20,000 people saved so far, but there were still 30,000 waiting. Still more time needed. Jimin looked at her squad. They were tired, covered in dust and blood, but none of them asked to stop. None of them asked to run. "Second group incoming," Yunji reported, looking at her scanner. 200 of them this time. They're bringing heavy weapons. Jimin nodded. "Good, more targets." Doan laughed weakly. It was not a happy laugh, but it was something. "You're crazy, Sergeant." "Maybe," Jimin admitted, "but I'm still alive, and as long as I'm alive, I'm fighting. That's what humans do, Private. We fight until we can't fight anymore, and then we fight some more." She checked her rifle. 23 bullets left. Not enough for 200 enemies, but enough to make a difference. "Yunji, how many explosives do we have left?" "Enough to collapse the main junction. But if we do that, we'll be trapped down here with them." "Then we make our stand at the reactor level," Jimin said. "It's narrow enough to limit their numbers, and if things go wrong, we can use the reactor itself as a weapon." Yunji's eyes widened. "You're talking about a meltdown. That would kill everything within 2 kilometers. "I know," Jimin met her friend's eyes. "That's the backup plan. If we fail, we make sure they lose too." The sound of Velthari boots echoed through the tunnels. They were coming. 200 warriors hungry for revenge. Jimin raised her rifle. "Let's show them what humans are made of." The alien queen ridiculed human warriors until she encountered one in battle. Part 3. Insects with Teeth. Warlord Rithais was not used to confusion. He had led armies across dozens of worlds, crushed rebellions, and burned cities. He knew war like he knew his own 4 hands. But standing at the entrance of the human minds, watching his warriors carry out body after body, he felt something he had not felt in centuries. Doubt. "How many?" he asked his lieutenant. 247 dead, Warlord. Another 80 wounded too badly to fight." Rithais looked at the bodies. Velthari warriors, some of the finest in the Empire, reduced to broken corpses by a handful of humans. According to the intelligence reports, there were only 12 enemy soldiers in these tunnels. 12. "Where are the human bodies?" he demanded. His lieutenant hesitated. "We have found none, Warlord." "None." "They take their dead with them, or hide them, we cannot be certain." Rithais turned to stare into the darkness of the mine entrance. Somewhere in that maze of tunnels, 12 humans were laughing at him. 12 short-lived, fragile, pathetic humans were making a fool of the Velthari Empire. "Send in the next group," he ordered. 500 warriors. Use thermal sensors. I want those insects dead within the hour." The lieutenant bowed and hurried away. Rithais watched his warriors march into the mines, their confidence less steady than before. They had heard the stories from the survivors, stories of enemies who appeared from nowhere and vanished into shadows, stories of explosions that brought down tunnels without warning, stories of a woman's voice laughing in the darkness. They called her the Ghost Sergeant. Deep in the mines, Sergeant Jimin was not laughing. She was counting bullets, 7 left in her rifle. 2 magazines of ammunition split between her remaining squad members. They had been fighting for 5 hours now, and they were running out of everything except determination. "Evacuation at 70%, Yoonji reported, reading the latest update on her device. 35,000 civilians are on the transport ships." "How much longer?" Doan asked. His young face was covered in dirt and sweat, but his hands no longer shook. Something had changed in him during the fighting. He was not the scared boy who had asked what to do. He was a soldier now. "Admiral says another 2 hours minimum," Yoonji replied. Jimin did the math. 2 hours, 7 bullets, 500 enemies coming toward them. "We need more weapons," she said. "The armory is on the other side of the colony," Sukjin pointed out. "We'd have to go through Velthari-controlled territory." "Not human weapons." Jimin looked at the Velthari rifle she had taken from a dead warrior earlier. "They're weapons. Every enemy we kill is a supply drop." Yoonji examined the alien rifle. "I can figure out how to use this. The mechanism is not too different from ours. Point and shoot." "Good, everyone find a Velthari weapon. Use it until it runs out. Then find another." They moved through the tunnels, heading toward the area where they had ambushed the first group. The bodies were still there, scattered among the rocks and debris. Jimin felt nothing as she stepped over them. Perhaps later, if she survived, she would have nightmares. But right now, there was no time for feelings. A sound echoed through the tunnels. Footsteps, many of them. The 500 warriors were getting close. "Positions," Jimin whispered. Her squad vanished into the darkness. They had learned to use every shadow, every corner, every crack in the rock. The Velthari had thermal sensors, but the mines were full of hot machinery and steam vents. It was hard to tell a human heat signature from a broken generator. The first group of Velthari appeared around the corner. They moved more carefully now, weapons ready, eyes scanning every shadow. They had learned from their dead comrades. But they had not learned enough. Jimin waited until 50 of them were in the open junction. Then she gave the signal. The attack came from 4 directions at once. Velthari warriors fell screaming, cut down by their own weapons in the hands of human soldiers. Before they could organize a response, the humans were gone, slipping through maintenance tunnels too small for Velthari bodies. After them, a Velthari officer shouted. They went that way. 50 warriors charged down the tunnel. They did not see Sukjin crouching in the shadows until it was too late. He triggered the explosive he had placed, and the tunnel collapsed behind them, trapping them with a dead end ahead and tons of rock behind. Jimin's voice came through the darkness. "Surrender is an option." The Velthari officer laughed. "We do not surrender to insects." "Then you die like fools." The trapped warriors fired wildly, their energy weapons lighting up the tunnel. But there was nothing to shoot at. The humans were not there. They had already moved to the next position, leaving their enemies to waste ammunition on empty darkness. It took 2 hours for those 50 warriors to die. Some suffocated when the air ran out. Others were picked off one by one when they tried to dig through the collapsed rock. Jimin's squad did not waste bullets on them. They simply waited and let fear and desperation do the work. On the surface, Warlord Rithais received another report. Another 100 warriors lost. Still no human bodies recovered. He sent a message to the flagship in orbit. "Empress, we have encountered unexpected resistance. The humans are using the mines to their advantage. I recommend orbital bombardment of the entire tunnel network." Empress Velith's response came quickly. "And destroy the mining equipment we came to capture. No, warlord. I want those humans dead, but I want them dead by Velthari hands. Do not disappoint me." Rithais ground his teeth in frustration. "It will be done, Empress." But deep down, he was beginning to wonder if it could be done at all. In the mines, Jimin's squad had reached the reactor level. It was the heart of the colony's power system, a massive chamber filled with machinery and control panels. From here, they could see anyone approaching through the narrow access tunnels. They had lost 2 soldiers in the last ambush. Sukjin had taken an energy blast to the chest. Another soldier, a woman named Yuna, had been caught by a Velthari blade when she tried to save him. Jimin had watched them die, and she had kept moving because stopping meant dying. 8 soldiers left, 3 hours of evacuation remaining, over 300 Velthari still hunting them. "We can't keep this up," Yunji said quietly. "We're running out of places to hide and they're learning our tactics." "I know." Jimin looked at the reactor controls. "That's why we make our final stand here." "Final stand?" Dowen looked at the massive machine behind them. "You mean?" "If they get past us, we overload the reactor. The explosion will kill everything in the mines and collapse the tunnels permanently. The Velthari won't be able to use any of this." Yunji nodded slowly. "And us? We won't survive the explosion either." Jimin met her friend's eyes. "But by then the evacuation will be complete. Our people will be safe." There was silence in the reactor chamber. Jimin looked at each of her remaining soldiers. Yunji, the calm medic who had saved countless lives. Dowen, the young private who had grown up in a single day. And 5 others, tired and wounded and ready to die for people they had never met. "Anyone want to leave?" Jimin asked. "There's a maintenance tunnel that leads to the secondary evacuation point. You could probably make it to a transport ship." Nobody moved. "Then let's get ready, they'll be here soon." They set up positions around the reactor room. They checked their stolen weapons. They said quiet goodbyes to each other, the kind of goodbyes that soldiers give when they know the end is coming. And then they waited for the enemy. 20 minutes later, the first Velthari appeared at the entrance to the reactor level. There were 200 of them now, led by Warlord Rithais himself. His golden markings gleamed in the emergency lights as he stepped into view. "Human," he called out, "I know you are in there. I am Warlord Rithais of the Velthari Empire. I offer you one chance to surrender with honor." Jimin's voice echoed back from the darkness. "I am Sergeant Jimin of the Human Defense Force. I offer you the same chance." Rithais laughed, but it was not a confident laugh. He had lost too many warriors to feel confident anymore. "You cannot win," he said. "You are 8 against 200. Even your tricks cannot save you now." "Maybe not," Jimin replied. "But I can promise you this. We will take 100 of you with us before we fall. Can you afford to lose another 100 warriors, Warlord? How many more Velthari lives are we worth?" Rithais did not answer. He was thinking about the message he would have to send to Empress Velith. Another 100 dead, and still the humans had not been defeated. "Very well," he said finally. "No surrender, we fight." "Yes," Jimin agreed from the shadows. "We do." The battle for the reactor room began. The alien queen ridiculed human warriors until she encountered one in battle. Part 4, The Queen Descends. The battle for the reactor room lasted 90 minutes. 90 minutes of chaos, fire, and death in the narrow tunnels of Meridian 7. When the smoke cleared, Warlord Rithais counted his remaining forces. 63 warriors left, out of 200, against 8 humans. Jimin's squad was down to 6 soldiers. They had retreated deeper into the reactor complex, using the massive machinery as cover. Yunji had taken a wound to her leg but was still fighting. Doan had blood on his face from a cut above his eye, but his hands were steady on his weapon. They were all going to die. Everyone knew it, but they were not dead yet. Above the planet, on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Empress Velith watched the battle reports with growing disbelief. Her scales had turned a shade of deep red that her servants had learned to fear. It meant she was not just angry. She was furious. 800 warriors, she said softly. I have lost 800 warriors to 12 humans. Commander Tiho stood in his corner of the bridge, watching silently. He had not spoken since the bombardment began. He did not need to. The battle reports spoke for themselves. Empress, one of her advisors said carefully, perhaps we should reconsider the orbital bombardment. The mines can be rebuilt. The loss of warriors cannot be easily replaced. Velith turned to look at him, her 4 hands clenched into fists. You suggest I retreat, that I admit defeat to a handful of insects. Not retreat, Empress, simply a change of strategy. No, Velith rose from her throne. I will not give the galaxy a story of Velthari running from humans. I will not let other species think they can resist us. This ends today. She pointed at her guards. Prepare my shuttle. I am going to the surface. The bridge went silent. The Empress had not personally led a ground assault in over 50 years. Her presence on a battlefield was reserved for the most important victories. Empress, another advisor said, surely this is not necessary. Warlord Rithais can handle. Warlord Rithais has failed. Velith's voice was cold as ice. His warriors have been slaughtered by a woman with a rifle and a handful of soldiers. If I must end this myself, then I will. She looked at Commander Tiho. And you, human, you will come with me. I want you to watch your sergeant die. Tiho met her yellow eyes without fear. As you wish, Empress. The shuttle descended through the burning atmosphere of Meridian 7. Velith looked out the window at the destruction her fleet had caused. Fires burned across the colony. Buildings had collapsed, but the mines still stood, stubborn and defiant like the humans inside them. 500 elite guards accompanied her. These were not ordinary warriors. They were the Empress's personal force, trained since birth to fight and die for her. Each one was worth 10 regular soldiers. When she landed, Warlord Rithais was waiting. He fell to his knees before her, all 4 arms pressed to the ground in submission. Empress, I have failed you. I accept whatever punishment you decree. Velith looked down at him with contempt. Get up, Warlord. You will have a chance to redeem yourself. Show me where these humans are hiding. They moved toward the mine entrance. The tunnels were filled with the bodies of fallen warriors. The walls were scarred by explosions and energy weapon fire. The smell of death hung heavy in the air. Velith's scales shifted to a thoughtful purple as she walked. She had conquered dozens of species, and none of them had fought like this. Most surrendered when they saw the size of her forces. Others fought bravely but fell quickly. These humans were different. They had turned their own weakness into a weapon. Empress, one of her guards said, pointing ahead, "We've found them." Through the darkness, Velith could see the entrance to the reactor room. And standing at that entrance, weapons ready, were 6 exhausted humans. One of them stepped forward. She was covered in blood and dirt, her armor was cracked, and she was clearly wounded in several places. But her eyes were bright, and her voice was steady. I am Sergeant Jimin of the Human Defense Force. I assume you are the Empress. Velith smiled. She walked closer, her guards spreading out behind her. I am Empress Velith, ruler of the Velthari Empire, conqueror of 400 star systems, and you are the insect who has caused me so much trouble. Jimin did not react to the insult. I am a soldier doing her duty, nothing more. Your duty? Velith laughed. Your duty is to die. Look around you, Sergeant. You are 6 against 500. Your evacuation ships are still not complete. In less than 1 hour, my forces will control this entire planet, and everyone on it will belong to me. Maybe, Jimin said, But you haven't won yet. Velith's smile faded slightly. There was something in the human's voice that bothered her. Not fear, not desperation, something else. I offer you a choice, Velith said. Surrender now and I will let your squad live as honored prisoners. You have fought well enough to earn that respect, but if you refuse, I will kill you all myself. Slowly. Jimin looked at her squad. Yoonji nodded slightly. Doan gripped his weapon tighter. The others stood ready. We have a different offer, Jimin said. Leave, take your warriors and go back to your fleet. This colony is under human protection. You are not welcome here. For a moment Velith did not understand. Then she laughed, long and loud, her 4 arms shaking with amusement. You are telling me to leave. You with your 6 soldiers and your empty weapons. You are giving me orders. I am giving you a chance, Jimin replied. That's more than you gave the civilians you bombed. Velith stopped laughing. Her scales turned dark red again. You dare speak to me of mercy. Your species is barely old enough to have crawled out of the mud. You know nothing of what I have done, what I have built, what I have sacrificed to create this empire. I know what you've destroyed, Jimin said simply. I know you bombed innocent people. I know you came here to take what doesn't belong to you. That's enough. Velith took a step forward. Her guards raised their weapons, ready to fire on her command. Enough. Nothing is enough until I say it is enough. I am the Empress. I decide what is taken and what is given. I decide who lives and who dies. And you, Sergeant Jimin, will die here today. She raised one of her 4 hands, ready to give the order. Wait. The voice came from behind her. Velith turned to see Commander Tiho stepping forward. Her guards immediately pointed their weapons at him, but he ignored them. Empress, Tiho said calmly, before you kill them, may I ask you something? Velith's eyes narrowed. You dare interrupt me? I do, because I think you should understand what is about to happen. What is about to happen is the death of your sergeant and her squad. Tiho shook his head. No, Empress. What is about to happen is you will order your guards to attack, and they will win, eventually. But Sergeant Jimin will not let herself be taken alive. She will overload the reactor behind her and kill everyone in these tunnels, including you. Velith looked at the reactor, then at Jimin. The human's hand was resting on a control panel. Her eyes were completely calm. You would die too, Velith said. Jimin nodded. Yes, but you would die with me, and my people would be free. For the first time since she had descended to the surface, Empress Velith felt something she had not felt in 200 years. She felt fear. You are bluffing, she said, but her voice was less certain than before. I am not. Jimin met the Empress's eyes without looking away. My squad has been dead since the moment the fighting started. We knew we would not survive this, but we did not fight to survive. We fought to give our people time to escape. 92% of the civilian population is now safely on transport ships. They will reach the human fleet within the hour. We have already won, Empress. The only question is whether you want to die with us. Velith stood frozen. Her guards waited for orders. The tunnels were silent except for the hum of the reactor. And Empress Velith, conqueror of 400 star systems, the most powerful being in a third of the galaxy, realized that she was afraid of a wounded woman with a broken rifle and nothing left to lose. The alien queen ridiculed human warriors until she encountered one in battle. Part 5. What humans are. The reactor room was silent. 500 elite Velthari guards stood ready to kill. 6 exhausted humans stood ready to die. And between them, 2 women stared at each other across a gap that was not just physical, but philosophical. Empress Velith's mind raced through possibilities. She could order the attack. Her guards would swarm the humans and kill them within seconds. But in those seconds, the sergeant would trigger the reactor. Velith would die in these tunnels, far from her throne, killed by an enemy she had called an insect. Or she could retreat, leave the humans alive, return to her flagship and continue the invasion from orbit. But then the galaxy would know that Empress Velith had been defeated by a handful of soldiers. The story would spread. Other species would start to believe they could resist her too. Both choices were unacceptable. "Why?" Velith asked suddenly. "Why do you fight like this? You are already dead. Your species is weak. Your lives are short. What possible purpose can this serve?" Jimin lowered her rifle slightly. Not because she was surrendering, but because she wanted the Empress to hear her clearly. "Let me tell you about humans," Jimin said. "We are not the strongest species in the galaxy. We do not live the longest. We do not have the best technology or the biggest armies, but we have something that your empire will never understand." "And what is that?" "We care about each other." Jimin gestured at her squad behind her. "These soldiers are not fighting because I ordered them to. They are fighting because they know that every minute we stand here, more of our people escape. They are not afraid to die because they know their deaths have meaning." Velith's scales shifted uncertainly. "Meaning? What meaning is there in death?" "The meaning we choose." Jimin took a step forward. The Velthari guards raised their weapons higher, but she ignored them. "Empress, you have conquered 400 star systems. You have ruled for 200 years. But tell me, when you die, who will mourn you? Your subjects fear you. Your enemies hate you. You have built an empire, but you have built nothing that will last." "My empire will last for 10,000 years." "Empires fall, all of them eventually. But the people I am protecting today will have children, and those children will have children, and in 1,000 years, someone will tell the story of 12 soldiers who gave their lives for strangers. That is meaning, Empress. That is what humans are." Velith stood frozen. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever dared. She should kill this human where she stood. She should make an example of her. But she didn't. "You would truly destroy yourself just to stop me." Jimin nodded, without hesitation. "Even though you have already saved most of your people, even though your mission is essentially complete. I made a promise to every civilian in those evacuation ships. I promised them that no Velthari would follow them. I intend to keep that promise." Velith looked at the reactor. She looked at the humans. She looked at Commander Tiho, who was watching with quiet pride in his eyes. And then Empress Velith, for the first time in her long life, made a decision based not on strategy or power, but on something she had almost forgotten she possessed. "Respect." "You are not what I expected," she said slowly. "When I called your species insects, I was wrong. Insects do not fight like this. Insects do not die for ideas. You are something else entirely." "We are human," Jimin said simply. Velith nodded. She raised her hand and her guards lowered their weapons slightly. "I am leaving," she said. "Not because you have won, not because I am afraid, but because killing you would not be a victory. It would prove nothing except that numbers can overwhelm courage, and I have no interest in that kind of victory." Jimin's squad exchanged confused glances. Was this a trick? Was the Empress actually retreating? "There will be consequences for this," Velith continued. "I will not forget what happened here, but I will remember it correctly. I will remember that 12 humans held my army for 8 hours. I will remember that you fought not for glory or conquest, but for your people. And I will remember that when you had the chance to save yourselves, you chose to stay and die instead." She turned to leave, her guards parting before her. But before she reached the tunnel entrance, she stopped. "Sergeant Jimin." "Yes, Empress." Velith looked back over her shoulder. "If we ever meet again, I hope it is as equals. You have earned that at least." Then she was gone, her 500 guards following her into the darkness. Jimin stood in the reactor room for a long moment, trying to understand what had just happened. Behind her, Yoonji let out a shaky breath. "Did we just win?" "I don't know," Jimin admitted. "But we're alive, and the evacuation is still going." As if on cue, her communication device crackled to life. Admiral Hunsick's voice came through, thick with emotion. Sergeant Jimin, this is Admiral Hunsick. Evacuation complete. 94% civilian survival. All transport ships are safe within fleet protection. Do you copy? Jimin closed her eyes. 94%. 47,000 people. Alive because 12 soldiers had refused to give up. I copy, Admiral. Mission complete. There was a pause. Then Hunsick's voice came back, softer now. Sergeant, the entire fleet is watching the sensor data. We saw the Velthari retreat. We saw them leave the mines without their prize. I don't know what you said to that Empress, but you just did something nobody believed was possible. You made the Velthari back down. Jimin looked at her squad. Yoonji was crying quietly, relief washing over her face. Doan was sitting on the ground, staring at his hands as if he could not believe they were still attached to his body. The others were hugging each other, laughing and crying at the same time. It wasn't just me, Admiral. It was all of us. I know, Hunsick's voice was proud. And the galaxy will know too. The Empress is returning to her fleet, but she's not ordering another attack. Whatever you did, it worked. 3 hours later, a human rescue shuttle landed in the mines. Jimin's squad was carried to safety, their wounds treated, their service honored. The news spread across the galaxy within days. 12 human soldiers had held off the Velthari Empire for 8 hours. They had saved 47,000 lives, and they had done something no other species had ever accomplished. They had made Empress Velith retreat. On the bridge of the Soul's Pride, Admiral Hunsick watched the Velthari fleet withdraw from the system. Commander Tiho had returned safely, delivered by the Empress herself as a gesture of acknowledgement. What do we do now, Admiral? Tiho asked. Hunsick looked at the stars, thinking about the soldiers who had given everything. Thinking about Sergeant Jimin, who was now in the medical bay, finally resting for the first time in days. Now we prepare, he said. The Empress retreated, but she won't forget. She'll be back someday with more forces and better strategies. And when she comes, we need to be ready. Will we win? Hunsick smiled. I don't know, but I know we'll fight. That's what humans do. 3 months later, a Velthari diplomat arrived at the Galactic Council. He carried a message from Empress Velith, requesting formal peace negotiations with the Human Defense Force. When the Council asked why the mighty Velthari Empire wanted peace with a minor species, the diplomat gave an answer that echoed through history. Because we finally understand what humans are. They are not warriors who fight to live. They are warriors who live to ensure others survive. And there is no victory against an enemy willing to die for something greater than themselves. The peace treaty was signed 1 month later. It was the first treaty the Velthari had ever signed as equals rather than conquerors. And when Commander Tiho, now promoted to captain, attended the signing ceremony, he wore something unusual around his neck. Dog tags, Sergeant Jimin's dog tags. She had survived her wounds, but she had insisted that Tiho carry them as a reminder of what humans were capable of, a reminder of what they were willing to sacrifice, a reminder that even the greatest empires could be humbled by courage. Far across the galaxy, Empress Velith sat on her throne in the eternal dominion. She was thinking about the woman who had stood before her with empty weapons and unstoppable will. She was thinking about the words that woman had spoken. We care about each other. Velith had lived for 200 years and conquered 400 star systems, but she had never understood that simple truth until a human sergeant had shown her. Perhaps, she thought, there was more to the universe than conquest. Perhaps there was something worth more than power. The thought disturbed her, but she could not shake it. And somewhere in her ancient heart, Empress Velith of the Velthari Empire began to wonder if being feared was really the same as being great. In the end, the Battle of Meridian 7 changed more than just one planet. It changed the way the galaxy saw humanity. It changed the way the Velthari saw themselves, and it proved something that every human already knew in their bones: that the strongest force in the universe is not power or technology or numbers. It is the love we carry for each other and the lengths we will go to protect it. That is what humans are, and that is why we will never be defeated.